Well, good morning. We are excited about the success Florida's had, and we're very excited about the opportunity to build off that success with the budget for the next fiscal year. Since 2019, we've led the nation in GDP growth amongst large states. Since 2020, we've led the nation in net income. We are ranked #1 for talent development, education freedom, higher education, new business formations, and we have the lowest unemployment rate amongst all large states and have consistently had that since the summer of 2020. So now's the time to build off that success. We know what works, and we need to continue to double down on those efforts. Our budget is called a focus on fiscal responsibility because that is what we are doing. We're showing that you could be fiscally responsible, respect taxpayers, and yet still deliver on the main promises that you made and the main public needs of our people. Budget I've proposed as a top line of $115.6 billion represents a spending reduction of $3 billion over current year. In our budget, we are reducing the number of government full-time employees by 741 on net. So there are parts where we need to beef up. Overall reduction, once you do the pluses and minuses, it's a negative 741. So that's a strong reduction in government FTEs. We will have a minimum of $14.6 billion in reserve, which is incredibly strong historically. Over $4 billion in unallocated general revenue. Now, the first part of the fiscal year, we've had revenue come in over estimate. Still, not as much as maybe we did 2 years ago. We anticipate continuing to see that over these next months. So we likely will have even more than that. But $4.2 billion unallocated GR. Just to put that in perspective, when I became governor, we had about $1 billion in unallocated GR, and that was the standard amount. People would say you need $1 billion in unallocated GR. The Budget Stabilization Fund, our rainy day fund, will top out at $4.9 billion. When I became governor in 2019, the Budget Stabilization Fund had about $1.4 billion in it. So we've more than tripled our rainy day fund over these last 6 years. We are also proposing to continue and to expand our accelerated debt repayment. We started this a couple years ago, understanding that even though Florida had low debt per capita, we had an opportunity to retire it sooner and at considerable savings to taxpayers. And so if our accelerated program in this budget is adopted by the end of the upcoming fiscal year, we will have retired 49% of the state's total historical debt from the time Florida became a state until I became governor. And I think that you have an opportunity to do even more in the following year. So that makes us and will solidify us as having the lowest per capita state debt anywhere in the United States. The budget has major tax. We've got a number of tax holidays. Some of these are oldies but goodies. Things like 14-day back-to-school sales tax holiday. We're going to continue with our Freedom Month for the month of July, where you have tax-free on all these great activities. We're also going to have our preparedness tax holidays. Unfortunately, those have been things that people has come in handy for folks over these last couple hurricane seasons. We're going to have a tool time tax holiday of 7 days yet again, and that's been very, very popular. We are adding a marine fuel tax holiday, which will help our boaters and our anglers be able to save money when they're fueling up their vessels. And then we are unveiling the Second Amendment tax holiday. So from Memorial Day till the 4th of July, you can get your ammunition, your firearms, and your accoutrements tax-free in the state of Florida. The biggest tax cut that we're proposing for this fiscal year will actually require 2 years, is the total elimination of the business rent tax. Florida is one of the few states, and maybe the only state, that taxes business rent. So if you want businesses to start, even though we're #1 in business formations, if you want these businesses to succeed and they're having to rent or lease property for their business operations, why would you tax that lease? It just doesn't make sense. Even very liberal states don't do that. We brought it down a lot since I've been governor, but we're proposing to put that on the path to elimination within 2 years. We also are proposing $170 million in tax relief for home buyers by putting a moratorium on the intangible residential mortgages up to a value of $500,000. $500,000 used to be, a pretty significant house. Now it's kind of the run-of-the-mill middle-class house, but we think that can be helpful as people continue to see. I mean, these interest rates are terrible. You have not seen, even as interest rates went up, a lot of people thought that the market may correct. The prices really, haven't really come down for new home. Something's got to give on the market. We want to be able to help people get into a new home. Law enforcement and state fire, we're proposing massive pay increases for all state LEs and for our state firefighters. 20% for all entry-level state sworn law enforcement and veteran sworn LEOs, 25% increase. We are also proposing a 25% increase for all state fire, and we appreciate their service. And of course, we're putting in the budget something that's been wildly successful, another $23 million for the recruitment bonus program. You've had sheriffs have used this, police chiefs have used it, we've used it with Highway Patrol and FDLE and some of these to bring in, not just bring in from other states, but new recruits who are young, who haven't been in law enforcement before, get them into this, and you get that $5,000 bonus, and people have really, really appreciated it. We're continuing to support education efforts across the state of Florida. This budget proposes a FEFP of $29.7 billion. That is a record by far. The $9,205 per pupil is also a record, and that represents an increase of $222 over current fiscal year. Budget also contemplates $95 increase in the base student allocation. Of all of that, one of the things that we're most proud of is we a categorical provision in the budget for teacher pay increases, because people would say increase education spending, and then you'd see it and it gets chewed up by bureaucracy or doesn't lead to higher teacher salaries, because ultimately, I think most people know this, the state of Florida teacher salaries, that's done on a district by district basis. Sometimes those are negotiations between districts and the school unions, and the school unions, quite frankly, have other interests. They're not necessarily just looking to help teachers. So we said, why would we just flush all this money down if we have no guarantee that this is going to be something that is going to benefit teachers? And so the categorical that we started, I think the first year was $500 million. We are now proposing a $1.5 billion teacher pay categorical, which locks in the gains and then adds about $250 million on top of what we've already done. And that's not just for district teachers, that also applies to our charter school teachers, and we're very proud of the success that our charter schools have had. I think if you look at the performance there, that would be very strong throughout the entire country if our charter population of almost 400,000 students was its own state. Bright Future scholarships in this budget are fully funded. We're very proud of the fact that if you're a good student and you want to attend one of our state universities and you got the grades and you got the board scores, that you can get a free ride or 75% depending. That makes getting a quality education without going deep into debt something that is attainable for all these talented, hardworking students. We are also ensuring in the budget that we will have yet another year of no tuition increases at our state colleges. We have the best value for Florida residents of any state in the country by a country mile. I think the average tuition is about $6,300. Most private K through 12 schools charge more than that. Some of them charge way more than that. And so I don't think you can get a better education with that price anywhere in the country. And there's a lot of places where they're in-state tuition. $15,000, $20,000 for some of these state universities. So we're really proud of holding the line on tuition. We want it to be affordable for people. And as somebody who, I had to work all these jobs when I was kind of going through and playing sports, I'm doing that, which is fine. But I also had to take out loans where you can go. If you're a good student, you can get it paid for, really high quality. But even if you don't reach that level, working just part-time jobs to pay this tuition is attainable for anybody. So we're proud of that, and we're going to keep that going. We're also proud of the historic success we've had on conservation efforts and protecting Florida's natural resources and Everglades restoration. This budget calls for $1.5 billion for restoration and water quality projects, over $800 million of that just for Everglades restoration. The amount of progress that we've made on that is truly historic. Water is flowing south like we haven't seen in many, many decades. Salinity places like Florida Bay are much better than they were 5 or 6 years ago. Things like raising the Tamiami Trail, and we're going to do part 2 of that, has let massive amounts of water. The reservoirs that we've built, and we have the one on the west side of Lake Okeechobee is going to come online this year. Huge, huge thing. Remember, before I became governor, 2016, massive discharges to the St. Stewart was under slime. 2018, the year before I came in, you had massive discharges, massive problems with the algae blooms on the west coast of Florida. You've really seen that moderate huge. Now, the Trump administration, when they were in the first time, they kicked the Army Corps in the rear, said, hey, you guys got to manage this lake better. That was a huge help. But I think because we've increased capacity for the water to flow south, for the water to be cleaned, we've obviated the need for them to do major. Now, we're not fully where we need to be because the Army Corps has work to do on the reservoir on the east side of Lake Okeechobee. We did our part. We got it up. They still have problems. And then the Everglades agriculture that they are way behind schedule on. One of the things we're going to be asking the president is, look, the Army Corps, I mean, there's snail's pace and then there's Army Corps pace. The slowest, most cumbersome bureaucracy I've ever seen. So we don't have time. And even just things like permitting, it takes them forever. So even the projects that are ours, we can't permit as quickly, even close as we need to. So we are going to be asking for both the permitting authority, but then also just block grant us the money for the Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir. We'll take the money, we'll build it, and I guarantee you we will build it much, much quicker and have it completed much sooner than anything the Army Corps. Nevertheless, even without the federal government doing, and I do think, I know the president is of the mind that he wants to do that, but it's been historic, and we're going to keep putting the foot on the gas on this and keep going forward. We've also had historic success in transportation and infrastructure. This budget calls for a $13.8 billion FDOT work program. That also doesn't necessarily include the Moving Florida Forward funds that we did. I mean, we had all this revenue that we had sitting there from the surpluses. The reserves were even more than they are now. I think the reserves got up to 18, 20 billion. Yes, we reduced taxes. Yes, we did Everglades, education. We were doing things, but we knew that we needed to accelerate these projects. So you have projects that are breaking ground now that weren't scheduled to even start till next decade. Things are going to be done 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ahead of schedule, depending on the project. And that's just a reality. The state's growing. We are not recruiting people to move to Florida. We like what we have. It's a free country. People can do that because we understand there are challenges when people come. But the reality is that's just what's happened. So we have a great emphasis. I mean, if you look at I-4, what's been done already has been great, but then you look at what's going to happen is this into the Polk County area, Champions Gate, all these terrible traffic log jams that are going to be alleviated when these projects are done. Some of the stuff in Southwest Florida, you got the Miami project, you got stuff in the Panhandle, Tampa Bay. All these things are going to be done so much earlier than what they were originally scheduled to be. So we're going to keep our eye on the ball on that. We also are mindful that we have many Florida homeowners. So yes, we're doing the reduction for new purchases. We also are doing the Hometown Heroes program to help people with those down payments. But for people that have homes, particularly in these hurricane-stricken areas, you have people that are on waiting lists for My Safe Florida Home program. We restarted that program a few years back, and I think it's been very successful. People have been able to get grants. They've been able to improve their homes, harden them. It's moderated and even reduced insurance rates for people in many respects, and it's protected them better against the storms that ended up coming. We recently proposed in the special session for the legislature to fund the folks that are on the wait list. That did not happen. We still think that needs to be done. We've got folks that went through the program that the legislature did, the inspection or waiting inspection, they qualified. Now they need the grant, but the program ran out of money. So we are funding the wait list as well as having $100 million recurring going forward. And I think the program's proven to be successful, and I know that's very popular. Could we keep up with total demand for it? Maybe not, because it's probably unlimited demand, but certainly those folks that are on the wait list now, we want to make sure that we get that done so that they can make the improvements that they need. So